Okay. So this week's Torah portion is Lech Lecha, get yourself out. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at Abraham leaves Haran. God tells him to leave. Now, they left Ur Kasdim, okay, which is where they were at, where his brother Haran was killed, Lot's father. According to the Midrash and the stories of Abraham, that Abraham was asked by his father to watch the idol shop. His father was a idol seller. Okay, and his dad told, because Abraham was the oldest of his two brothers, and so he asked him to watch it. And so his dad had to go do something. Anyways, his dad gets back, and all the idols are destroyed except for this big one in the middle. It's holding a hammer. And his dad says to Abraham. His dad says to Abraham, "What happened here?" And he says, "Well, that big one grabbed the hammer and destroyed other idols." And his dad says, "Impossible. They're not even real." And Abraham says, "Correct." Anyways, his dad brought it to Kedorlaomer, or as we know him as Nimrod. And Kedorlaomer had him thrown into a pit of fire. Okay? But nothing happened to him. And Haran, smoke didn't get his clothing, nothing happened. So Haran, his brother, seen this and stood up, and basically was saying the same thing that Abraham was, but his faith wasn't really there. His faith was in Abraham, not in who Abraham's faith was in. And so Kedorlaomer threw Haran into the fire, and he was consumed. Thus, it says about his father that Haran was killed before him. Okay, and so from that point they leave and they travel on to a city called Haran. Probably because, and they stayed there for quite a while. Probably because it was Haran who had died.
Probably named after him.
Well, no.
Oh.
It was already named that before.
That's where he went
But
to get
yeah,
the wife for it. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, so what we see here is that tells Abraham, Lech Lecha, go from here, country away from your family, etc., to a land that I'm going to show you. Okay, and God wants him to leave, to get away from his family. Why? Not necessarily a good atmosphere for him. And God wants him. God's calling him. Okay, we already know that God was most likely a dealer in idols. His son was killed. Did come to we don't know, but he stayed there. And what's interesting is that that now we read that his dad died. Okay, in Haran. Terach lived 205 years and he died in Haran. Now the thing is, a lot of people think that the reason why Abraham left is because his dad died. Well, the thing is, when we really take a look at the timeline, we see that Terach died many years later after Abraham had left to go to the land of Canaan. Okay, so he died in Haran without Abraham. Abraham left with his wife, with all his possessions, and it said he left Lot, his nephew, okay, and all the souls that he had made, okay. And here it says that that he, as well as the people that he had acquired in Haran. In Hebrew, it doesn't say that. It says the souls that he had made. And what it's referring to is that Abraham was a very godly man. He, just like the story goes about him and the idols and the idol shop and stuff, he taught people. And that's what we're going to read about too, even in the next couple of stories and stuff, is that he taught people the one true God, converted them to the belief and monotheism of the one true God. And they followed him. they weren't necessarily servants or slaves. They became part of the household. So they followed him because he had converted them to God, to the one true God, the one who is leading them. That's why Eliezer, even when we see later when he goes to get a wife for Isaac, is so beholden to Abraham and his God. You know, very much so, because Abraham was that influence. Maybe he could influence his dad. I don't know, because sometimes dads are set in their ways, just the way it goes sometimes. But anyways, but he left. He goes there with his family, those he had made, yes, with servants and people that he had acquired, but also with the souls that he had made. He had converted to the God, monotheism. And he goes there and he walks the land and everything, right? And we see that. Um, and what's interesting here too is that sages teach that Israel would follow in the footsteps of the patriarchs. Okay, so we see here first Abraham leaves Ur the Kasdim, which later in that area becomes Babylon, also the Persians, and so Israel goes there. They start out in Egypt. Well, they are in the land of Canaan, but then they go to Egypt where they become a great nation. They come out of there. We'll see here that Abraham, he too, traveling through the land, going to the Negev, and there's a famine. And so it says he goes to Egypt. And Egypt, why Egypt? If there's a famine in the land, why Egypt? Later, Joseph goes into Egypt, comes later to Egypt, where they are fed and taken care of, right? And what's interesting is that he tells his wife, so they won't kill me and I'll be treated well for you. I don't think he was expecting her to be taken to the Pharaoh's household, though. But she was, and blessed him and stuff. And so Pharaoh gave him, different things, right? And then Pharaoh finds out is really his wife, and he becomes upset. What we're looking at here is that Sarai, in essence, is the children of Israel in the land of Egypt. Okay? And what happened is that Pharaoh and his family were cursed. We don't exactly know what happened, but apparently they weren't able to have children and different things like that. Different things were happening. Different plagues were coming upon Egypt at that time. The sages and the rabbis teach that it was the same plagues God used with Moses at that time. And that he summoned his magicians and stuff, and they told him that it's Abraham, that you have his wife. Okay, and of course at this time he's Abraham. And so he calls in Abraham and tells him, get out, get your people, get out. Also, he's able to keep the Egyptian slaves and stuff that he has, right? The ones that were given to him, right? And so he gives Sarah back to him. In this sense, Abraham is like Moses, okay? And he leaves, but he leaves with great possessions. Just like the children of Israel, when they left Egypt, they left with great possessions, right? So there's a same story here. We've seen it over again, huh? Correlation, yeah, exactly. It's the same picture. God's telling us a picture over and over, okay? And so he leaves and goes into where? The land of Canaan. And where does he set up? He sets up at Moriah. At first, that's where he goes, to Moreh, which is by the Mount Moriah, which is where the Temple Mount is later on, the temple. And he sets up there, and God reveals. And he lives there. He builds an altar there, as we know. But also during this time, we see that Lot and Abraham's possession so great that there's just not room for them to dwell in the same spot. And so Abraham goes to him and says, hey, Lot, you know what? I don't want us to quarrel or anything else. Family is important, right? So if you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left. But we need to separate, right? And so Lot does. He chooses for him the best that was there, right? The plains, which later became the Dead Sea after Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed. And there was the Jordan River that through there. It was full of life. It was like the garden, it says. It's like the Garden of Eden, the Garden of God. Very plush, very, very good. And so that's where he went. And now, in essence, we can see not that Lot is Israel, but that later goes to countries and becomes settled there because the things that are good, like we see that in like Germany and the United States and other countries where they went, Poland and other places, that they had good lives there. But it wasn't where God wanted them. And Lot knew about Sodom and Gomorrah. He knew the things that were there. Even Abraham knew, and that's why he wouldn't take anything from them, okay, because their stuff was cursed down there. At first, he lived in a tent near there. But later on, we see that he moves into the city, which we'll see in next week's Torah portion, right? And judgment comes down on, but we see it as, but we'll see it, another picture that we see also about the end of the world, the end of the age, the end of days. And now God approaches Avram, and he says to him, I'm going to make you a great nation, and your descendants are going to keep my covenant. And he says in chapter 15, says, sometime later, the word of Adonai came to Avram in a vision. Don't be afraid, Avram, I'm your protector. Your reward will be very great. Avram replied, Adonai God, what good will your gifts be to me if I continue childless and Eliezer from Damascus inherits my possessions? You haven't given me a child. Avram continued to, so someone born in my house will be my heir. But the word of Adonai came to him. This man will not be your heir. No, your heir will be a child from your own body. Then he brought him outside and said, look up into the sky and count the stars, if you can count them. Your descendants will be that many. He believed in Adonai, and he credited to him as righteousness. So he comes to Abraham, and he says, I'm going to bless you, okay? And you are going to have a son, and you're going to have descendants, and they're going to be as numerous as the stars of the sky, right? If you can count them, that's how many you're going to have. He believed God. He had faith. He put his trust in God that this was going to happen. His faith is made him that God credited him as righteousness because he believed him without a doubt, right? Well, now we go into this where in verse 7 of 15, then he said, who brought you out from Ur-Kasdim to give you this land as your possession? He replied, Adonai God, how am I to know that I will possess it? And he answered him, bring me a 3-year-old cow, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a dove, and a young pigeon. And he brought him all these, cut the animals in two, and placed the pieces opposite each other. But he didn't cut the birds in half. Birds of prey swooped down on the carcasses, but Avram drove them away. As the sun was about to set, a deep sleep fell on Avram. Darkness came over him. Okay, where do we hear about a deep sleep? Adam, right? And out of Adam came who? Chava, right? Eve. So now we're seeing there's a picture here too. Okay. Adonai says to Avram, know this for certain, descendants will be foreigners in a land that is not theirs. They will be slaves and held in oppression there for 400 years. But I will also judge that nation, the one that makes them slaves. Afterwards, they will leave with many possessions. As for you, you will join your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. Only in the 4th generation will your descendants come back here, because only then will the Amori be ripe for punishment. What's interesting is that when we look at a covenant being made, it's usually, or promises it's made with us, it usually doesn't follow to the next generation, right? So as human beings, we only see part of the story. We don't see that part that we live. But God, who is forever, sees the whole thing out. And he's making a covenant out, not with just Abraham, but with his descendants after him. Everybody of his descendants, okay? And he's going to live for a good long time. But it says that his descendants will be slaves for 400 years. Now, when we go to when Israel is in Egypt, we see that they were only there for 210 years. Why? Because God, as we read, God heard their cries, their moanings, their repentance and efforts. And so it says that in the fourth generation, will your descendants come back here? So he cut it short.
Generation is 50 years too, so that would have been, he said 4 generations at the same time. Even though he said 400 years, he said 4 generations. So he already knew that it was going to be cut short.
Yep. And that's a promise we see too, that we read in Revelation too, that Yeshua says that if that time period, the tribulation wasn't cut short, there would be no one to live, no one to survive, right? And so here we go. Oh, big picture here. Same thing. God is telling Abraham the same thing. So you're going to be there for 400 years, but in the fourth generation, I will bring them back. I will cut it short. Because if I don't cut it short, no one to bring back. Okay? It'll be a remnant. It's a remnant, right? The beginning is teaching us the end, and the end is teaching us the beginning. What is it that God is doing? We started out in the garden. The world was destroyed. Now we have a picture of that too, the world being destroyed. The world, the first world, the world with Adam through Noah, it was that present age, right? But the world after that was the world to come. Okay, but now we call it the world of this age. But and we're looking for the world to come after this age, right? A new beginning. And that's what Noah was given, a new beginning. Noah was the 10th generation from Adam. Number 10 is a number for judgment, right? Abraham is the 10th generation from Noah. Again, judgment comes. God finds Abraham worthy and his descendants worthy. Instead of destroying the world again, he builds his promises on Abraham and his descendants. You see how that works? It keeps going, keeps repeating. We're going to see a lot of this. So deep sleep falls on him, right? And horror and great darkness come. Abraham, know this for certain. Okay, and we just read that. Your descendants are going to be slaves and held in Egypt, in a foreign country, for 400 years. Okay, and they're going to be oppressed and stuff. But in the fourth generation, your descendants will come back here. Okay, so he's going to cut it short. Okay, just as we were just talking about. Now, after the sun had set and there was thick darkness, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch appeared, which passed between the animal parts. That day Adonai made a covenant with Avram. Descendants from the body of Egypt. What's the body of Egypt? If you look in the top, there's a whole bunch of, from the Nile, there's a bunch of different rivers that break off of it go into the Mediterranean, right? And body, and right there where the river and those come together, they generally refer to that as the body of Egypt. So all the way, this is the promise of the land, right? We only see, Israel only got part of it. See, that's another picture there. Just as we only got a picture of the new covenant, he got a taste, and Israel got a taste of the kingdom to come, okay? And it's okay. The body of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates, the territory of the Canaani, the Kenizi, the Kadmoni, the Hitti, the Perizi, the Rephaim, the Amori, the Canaani, the Girgashi, and the Yavusi. Okay? That's what he's going to give them. It's way bigger than what Israel did take. Okay? They were only given a small portion of it. But the portion to come, in the world to come, is going to be much bigger. Much bigger. And so we continue on. Now, the covenant God made with Abraham, when we take a look at it, Abraham cuts up the animal parts, he puts them, spreads them out so they're separated. And that's how a covenant was made. They would separate the animals, carcasses, and the two would walk between them, basically saying that this is the covenant I'm making between us, and if I break this covenant, so may I be like these animals, okay, these offerings here, okay? And But what's interesting is that it says a fire pit and a torch, a lapid, walked between them. Okay? What it is that God walked between there for Abraham. See, Abraham can't break it because in reality, God made it with himself and gave it to Abraham as an honorary covenant. Okay? Something that can't be taken away because God made it. God can change it. He can upgrade it, and that's what he's done. That's why the new covenant, which we refer to, is really the a renewed covenant. And the other covenants that come after that are just built upon the same covenant of Abraham. Okay? They're not done away with. So just because a new part of the covenant comes out doesn't mean it takes away from what was from the beginning. Okay? It's not there. Just like the covenant that God made with Noah is not done away with either. God has built upon this a covenant and continues to build a covenant. And what we refer to as the new covenant, according to Jeremiah 31, a renewed covenant, a refreshed covenant. Okay? And God makes it with Abraham. So, but he gives it to Abraham as a honorary covenant because he knows that Abraham is human. He's going to make mistakes. He's not going to uphold it the way he should. Okay? And so what he does now, and we'll go to chapter 16, and we see that in essence, if God had made it with Abraham and Abraham had walked between there, Abraham would have broke the covenant. Why? Now Sarai, Abraham's wife, had not borne him a child, but she had an Egyptian. Sarai said to Abraham, "Here now Adonai has kept me from having children, so go in and sleep with my girl. Maybe I'll be able to have children through her." Abraham listened to what Sarai said. Okay, where do we hear this? Because you listen to your wife. Adam and Eve again, right? Goes back there. Because you listen to the voice of your wife, right? Now, when we see these two things, bad things happen, okay? Bad things happen. His wife. He went in and did what he needed to do, right? Because he too was thinking, well, God can be through you, but maybe that's what God's meaning. You know, so listen to his wife, you know. Maybe just through her, and we can have children that way, you know. And so he believes her and stuff, right? Well, we know that was a mistake, especially now over of what's happened, right? If Abraham had said no, then we wouldn't have the scourge that we have today in the Middle East. But just like Adam, Noah listened to his wife. And not only that, but Hagar became a disrespectful person to Sarah, right? Disrespectful. Just like, and we have two parts. We have of Cain, Abraham, and Hagar is like Cain, okay, in that sense. And the descendants of Ishmael, they did not like the descendants of Seth, of Isaac, right? Ishmael, who is the legitimate firstborn of Abraham's household, should have got what Isaac got, but God said no. And we see this happen again with between Jacob and Esau and so forth, right? We see also with Reuben and Joseph, right? So we're going to see it. It's something that happened, but God is the one who can change this. But we do read later in the Torah that He changes that. You can't do that, right? You can't do that. I can do that because I'm God, because I know what I'm doing. I know the plan. You can't do that, okay? And that's fine. Sometimes there's rules for us and there's rules for them. There's commandments for the Gentiles, but there's also separate commandments and stuff for us as well as Jews, right? So we see that as this continuous thing that we see. And so Hagar, it becomes contemptible to Sarah, disrespectful and stuff. And she says to him, "This outrage being done to me is your fault." But she admits, "True, I gave my slave girl to you to sleep with." Okay, I did get it, but But you didn't have to do it. You didn't have to do it. Right? You didn't have to do it. I don't know. Maybe Eve said to after everything happened she probably said to Adam, you didn't have to listen to me. Hello. So maybe.
Nothing happened when I ate it.
Yeah, nothing happened when I ate it. If you ate it, all crap hit the fan, man. Right? Yeah. So, anyways, and now that she's pregnant, she's holding me in contempt. I decide who is right, I or you. So he's putting it on God's hand. Who is right? But Abraham, he says, look, she's your slave girl. Deal with her as you think fit. And so Sarai began to treat her harshly, right? So she runs away. But God had told Abraham that he would have many descendants, many kings, right, would come from him. And so when she ran away, the angel of God comes to her. She learned of God through Abraham. And where she come from? Egypt. She was an Egyptian who was given to Abraham during the time that Sarai was in. They were in Egypt, right? And anyways, so that's what she does. She understands who God is now, and she puts her trust in him. And God says, "Now you're going to have a son. You're going to name him Ishmael, because I paid attention. Okay, and this is what you're going to do. You call him Ishmael. But here's the thing: he's going to be a wild donkey, or if you want to use the other term, of a man. And what does that mean? He's going to be stubborn. He's going to be stubborn. He's not going to listen to other people, right? With his hand against everyone and everyone's hand against him. Okay, so we see that, right? We see even today that the descendants of Ishmael, their hand is against each other and against the world. They're fighting each other. They're fighting the world, right? So we see that. And this is all brought on. How? Why? Because Adam listened to his wife. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't listen to your wife, but you definitely both should be working together for the same goal, right? Should be listening to each other. Husbands should be teaching their wives. Wives teach the husbands too, in many cases. And wives, in many cases, when the man is struggling with certain things, especially with his walk with God, the wife can strengthen him and help make the path clear. And we know that we've gone through that before, so we know that. That's the Eshet Chayil, the woman of valor, and my wife is definitely that. And I thank God for her. So Abraham has a son through Hagar. He is born. She called him Ishmael. Okay. And after all this is done, how old is he? He's 86, right? And then in chapter 17, when Abraham was 99 years old, Adonai appeared to him and said to him, I am El Shaddai, God Almighty. Okay? Walk in my presence and be pure-hearted. I will make my covenant between me and you, and I will increase your numbers greatly. Abraham fell on his face, and God continued speaking with him. As for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. Your name will no longer be Avram, exalted father, but your name will be Abraham, father of many, because I have made you the father of many nations. I will cause you to be very fruitful. I will make nations of you. Kings will descend from you. Okay? Now, look at this. It repeats down here. Okay? God said in verse 15, God said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, you are not to call her Sarai, mockery. Her name is to be Sarah, princess. I will bless her. Moreover, I will give you a son by her. Truly, I will bless her. She will be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her. At this, Abraham fell on his face and laughed. So, two places, it's got the same story. So the Bible, in a sense, repeats itself. It reinforces itself. Okay? So, he says, I'm establishing my covenant between me and you, along with your descendants after you, generation after generation, as an everlasting covenant to be God for you and for your descendants after you. I will give you and your descendants land in which you are now foreigners, all the land of Canaan as a permanent possession, and I will be their God. Now, God says it's going to be a possession. So Israel goes in later and takes the land. If it's a permanent possession, why does God take it away? Because it's not permanent yet, right? So when will it be permanent? It won't be permanent until the renewed covenant, the new covenant, the world to come. And then it will be a permanent possession, never to be taken away, right? Huh?
A little tease along the
Yeah,
way.
it's a taste, right, of what you can have. Right. So, anyways, now God said to Abraham, "As for you, you are to keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you, generation after generation. Here's my covenant, which you are to keep between me and you, along with your descendants after you. Every male is to be circumcised. You are to be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskin. This will be a sign of the covenant between me and you, generation after generation. Every male among you who is 8 days old is to be circumcised, including slaves born within your household and those bought from a foreigner, not descended from you. The slave born in your household and the person bought with your money must be circumcised. Thus my covenant will be in your flesh as an everlasting covenant." Everlasting means forever, right? Everlasting. Not just be till Abraham dies, but for everlasting into the next generations, etc. But any uncircumcised male who will not be circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that person will be cut off, broken my covenant. Okay. Now here's the interesting thing. We see this happening. It's happened a couple times where Israel was in the land of Egypt, and later on they weren't circumcising their children, so they had to circumcise again. Again, we see after 40 years go into the land, Joshua has the children of Israel, the men, be circumcised again. Why? Because we're going to see this as we see this. In order for the covenant to be established, they have to follow that practice. So, guess what? When Israel came out of Egypt, came out with a mixed company, right? Guess who also had to be circumcised? That mixed company. Now, what we're looking at is physical circumcision. It's physical circumcision, yes, it's for Israel, for the Jews. But there's a spiritual circumcision, a circumcision of the heart that Moses talks about, that Paul refers to and talks about as well. And that's for everybody. It's the physical circumcision. It's the circumcision of the heart, to cut away that hardness and that rebelliousness that's on us, to have a true relationship with God. Okay? A true intimate relationship with God is to sever that foreskin of our heart. And when we talk about the heart, we're referring to the mind, okay? In Judaism and stuff, when we're talking about the heart, we're talking about the mind. A renewing of our heart, renewing of our mind, renewing of our mind from the old way of thinking, the old life, to the new way of thinking, the thinking of God, how God thinks, how God has put these things together. God repeats this over and over, and we see that. And so, and God says, or Abraham says, at this, Abraham fell on his face and laughed, okay? He thought to himself, 100 years old, will Sarah give birth at 90? Abraham said to God, if only Ishmael could live in your presence. God answered, no. But Sarah, your wife, will bear you a son, and you are to call him Yitzhak, which means laughter. Why? Because Abraham laughed. Well, who else laughs later, right? Sarah. See? Yeah, see? I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. But as for Ishmael, I have heard you. I have blessed him. I will make him fruitful and give him many descendants. He will father 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Yitzhak, whom Sarah will bear to you at this time next year. With that, God finished speaking with Abraham and went up from him. So next year at this time, he's going to have a son. I'm going to call him Yitzhak, right? Laughter, because he laughed, and Sarah's going to laugh too, as we hear. But he says, but God, what about Ishmael? He's my son too. God says, no, he might be your son. I've heard you. He'll be too, but no. The idea was for you not to have a son with Hagar, but to have a son with Sarah, and we're going to continue this. And the covenant will follow him as an everlasting covenant. My covenant will be on him, not on Ishmael, on him. So I've heard a lot of people say, well, Ishmael was Abraham's descendant too, so the covenant must go with him too. No, it doesn't. And God says it right there. They are not part of the covenant. Yeah, God's plan. Ishmael is man's desire to make it happen. Yitzhak is God's plan to make it happen. He was the promised son, right? He's the promised son. Yeshua, the promised son, right? So we see that it happens over and over. And it's very important that we see that. And so Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in his flesh. Ishmael was 13 when he was circumcised in his flesh. This is where we get the concept of a bar mitzvah, a boy being having his bar mitzvah at 13. In essence, he becomes an adult. He is now able to be minion of men for prayer and teaching and stuff like that, to lead a congregation, help lead a congregation, read from the Torah, right? So that's kind of where we got that, where we get that. And we see that. So that guess who was also circumcised on the 8th day? Yeshua was circumcised on the 8th day. And what day was that? Shemini Ateret, the 8th day. Hello, part of Sukkot, right? The last day of Sukkot. He was circumcised on the last day of Sukkot. The 8th day. The supernatural day. Exactly. That's because it's the 8th day. 8 is a number for new beginnings. It's a supernatural day because we have 7 days in a week. God created heaven and earth in 6 days and rested on the 7th. Why is it that almost all calendars coming down through the ages always 7 days? It's a number for completion, but it's because that's where it came from. God started it, right?
Everybody got it from the same guy.
Yeah, everybody got it from the same guy. So as we're seeing this, we're gonna see some other things too. Now the Besorah reading today actually should be for next week. I don't know why they put it in this week's, so we'll probably read that again next week, because there's some mighty things happening with that verse and with Akedah, the binding of Isaac, that are very important that people understand what that's all about. You know, because that's all a future thing. It happened in the past. God's doing it in the physical, and then he does it in the spiritual. Okay? That's how God works. And it's there, and we see it. Not only that, but we see the prophets prophesy about the same type of thing going on. That's going to happen again. As it says in Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. What has been will be again. God repeats it. Why? Because sometimes we can't get it in our brains what's going on. See, we only see a small picture, but God sees the big picture. God's sharing this big picture with us, but our finite minds can only grasp what we see right now, what we can see maybe in our lifetime, maybe, and that's it. But God goes beyond our lifetime. And that's why he sent Yeshua. That was the whole problem. That's what we're seeing. Yeshua is the one who's going to lead us back to the Garden of Eden, back to a renewed earth and a renewed heavens, the renewed covenant, the world to come after the Messianic era. So for now, the Torah is still in effect in this generation all the way up to the end of the Messianic era, the 1,000-year reign. That's at that time, that's when it will be completed. And the new earth and new heavens will come into be. And the new Jerusalem, it's the Garden of Eden coming back to earth, because God took it away before the flood, before, because of the sin of Adam and Eve, and how evil people became then, right? It's interesting that God only found Noah in that world, but that's the same thing with Lot too, right? Lot's family was saved, well, other than his wife, but there's a similar thing there too. Lot left, but the angels had to actually force him out of the city, right? And Noah went in, and then God shut the door. The thing. So there's a picture there. God shut the door on the ark for Abraham, or for Noah, but he also had the angel lead Lot out of the city so he could destroy it.
I think he had to put Noah in the ark too.
I think that might be true. I think there's a
yeah.
Let's go. We got to go. Yep.
Yeah.
So we see the same picture. happen, right? So, so we see, so it repeats. See, we see repeat, right? There's an old joke, but anyways, but it's not a joke. God is repeating things for our benefit, so that we can see these things. That it's
So we can't say,
yeah. And what
I didn't do
Yeah.
that.
and what does Joseph say to Pharaoh? The two dreams are one, but he's giving you twice because it's going to happen, right? Because that's what God's telling us. This is what's going to happen. It's going to happen. Eventually, it's going to happen. All right? So we got to understand that. All right. So we will bow our heads and do the priestly blessing. Page 586. Our God and God of our fathers, bless us with the threefold blessing in the Torah written by the hand of Moses, your servant, and pronounced by Aharon and his sons, the priests, your holy people, as it is said. May the Lord bless you and keep and protect you. Maybe you will. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face towards you and grant you peace. Yivarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha. Shalom. Go in peace. Have a great rest of Sabbath. A great week this week coming up. Next week will be on Bayera. Be the fourth Torah portion for the new year. Tuesday night we have our Torah Club at 7:00. And you can go to FFOZ or TorahClub.org, FFOZ.org or TorahClub.org, and look and see what Torah Club's all about. It's great right now. From a Jewish perspective, which is really great. And the thing that's interesting is that they have a saying, which I have adopted for us too, is that Jesus is Jewish, and that changes everything. Okay? And so we need to understand that. But also Wednesday night, we have our Wednesday night study, which we're finishing up the book God-Fearers by Toby Janicki, and then we'll start the week after with the book Tent of David by Boaz Michael, which is really excellent. We're going to split into each chapter into two because the chapters are pretty long. So we'll be splitting those up into two readings, and I'll let everybody know where we're going to finish each week on there. And so there'll be about 20 questions on each one, which I've already got done. I've already finished a lot of it. Very good to help us understand. It's repairing the tent of David. That includes about the Gentiles and their place in the tent of David. Okay, very important and stuff. So, but other than that, keep praying for Israel. Keep praying for our president, for our government. Also with the SNAP and stuff like that, make sure that if we can give to food shelf and stuff like that for people who need it, that they can get this figured out, that the other side will quit with their demand for this ACA thing. They can talk about it after. It's not what's important right now. We need to just get the government back so that people can back to work, especially the people that are at the airports. What do you call them? Air traffic controllers and stuff. You know, it's dangerous. But yeah, without pay. So, and our military, you know, defending our country and stuff like that. We really need to be praying about that. So. Yeah. Well, they had to because they weren't doing their job. That's the other thing. Some of those
I don't think they're doing their job right now in Congress.
Congress. Yeah, I agree. They shouldn't be getting paid for this.
Be getting paid for
Yeah.
one, and
Yeah.
they should be docked.
I agree. Yeah, I like the bill that the Republicans put forward to that anytime there's a shutdown that members of Congress and Senate do not get paid.
Yeah, exactly.
And
yeah,
no back pay either. Exactly. So that they can sit down and say, okay, well, hey, we're not going to get paid. We need to fix this, right? Yeah. Yeah. Quit being children. Both sides. I'm talking both sides. Both sides. Quit being children. Huh? Yep, you do your job. Exactly. So, all right. So that's what we have here. Great week. And Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and or back here for services next Shabbat. Yes.
was wrong. Noah went into the ark on his own and God shut him in.
Okay. So Noah went in on his own, but God did shut. Probably because he maybe
It was too heavy.
was thinking,
Well, the door, they didn't put a latch on the inside or something.
Yeah. yeah. But it's possible. The idea is that he may have been, he was preaching to these people for 120 years, and he was still hoping for more than just his family,
I
right?
figured out that I have to carry in the bags of salt.
Yeah.
Because Rick can't do it anymore. You know,
So.
at that age, you know.
Yeah,
sometimes you just
true.
have to let somebody else do it.
Yep. So, all right. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat shalom. Good Shabbos. Have a great week.